At the Silver Dragon Castle courtyard, where everyone is crying loudly. In front of them, a fire rages. Leon wonders what's going on, asking why it's so lively. A maid, tears streaming down her face, explains that the two princesses had requested a funeral and asked them to prepare a bonfire. Moon, tearing up, offers to give the steak to Leon and wishes for his return and sees them. Noah notes that the person has already left and tells Moon to let it go. Confused, Leon wonders if this is some kind of new pretend game and chooses to cooperate a little. As he pushes through the crowd, he struggles to move forward. The maids, upon seeing him, are shocked and find it hard to believe their eyes. Leon notices and questions about what they are worshipping. A memory surfaces. Their grandfather once taught him to play the swona, and asks if they want him to show them how to play it. Upon seeing his photo, he smiles in recognition, pausing briefly to admire how handsome it looks. As realization strikes, his jaw drops in shock, and he screams loudly, overwhelmed by disbelief. Moon, seeing Leon taken aback, pointed her finger at him and shouted loudly, alerting everyone that their father had shown up. Upon seeing Leon, Noah was also taken aback. Leon, with an awkward and grooming expression, remarks that it's only been 1 day since he left, wondering if it's too soon to hold a funeral for him. Moon, her eyes filled with tears, looks at him and calls out to him as Daddy. She then rushes into his arms, crying, overjoyed to have him back. Leon, seeing her reaction, looks at her in confusion. Moon, still tearful and gazing into his eyes, expresses her fear that he might not want her anymore. Leon, with a gentle smile, pats Moon's head and reassures her, wondering why she would think such a thing. Noah, looking away, mentions that both he and Moon searched for Leon in the castle several times but couldn't find him, and she thought Leon had left. Leon, with an awkward smile, reassures Noah, saying there's no reason for him to leave, explaining that he had simply gone for a walk in the back mountain. Noah, glancing at Leon's belonging box, realizes that she might have wronged him. Leon then lifts Moon into his arms and tells the servants that it's all right, everyone can go home now. The servants nod in agreement and begin to leave. Moon, pointing at the food, eagerly asks if she can eat the tribute now that Daddy is back. Leon, smiling, tells her that she can, and Moon excitedly runs towards the tribute, exclaiming that it's good. Leon, watching her, thinks to himself that Moon is definitely not like him, noticing how greedy she is. Noah, looking at Leon, tells him that next time he goes out by himself, he should remember to inform them. Leon, remaining silent, simply looks at her. Noah, blushing and turning her gaze away, adds that Moon was worried about him. As a shy and proud girl, Noah struggles to admit that she was also concerned. Leon, scratching his head, apologizes, but then corrects himself, saying he's sorry for making Moon worry. Internally, Leon thinks to himself that Noah is clearly concerned about him but too embarrassed to admit it aloud. Noah, looking at Leon, acknowledges that the situation is her fault, as she didn't trust him. Then, unexpectedly, Noah bows deeply to Leon and apologizes. Leon, taken aback by her sudden actions, watches in surprise. Leon, looking at Noah, wonders if this was her way of holding a farewell ceremony due to a misunderstanding. He thinks that, clearly, no one would have known if she hadn't said anything. With a smile internally, Leon reflects that precocious children often take responsibility for their mistakes, but this was ultimately his fault for not providing her with enough of a sense of security. Leon realizes that Noah longs for affection and love, but she won't take the initiative to seek it out. Even if he promises her something now, she probably won't believe him easily. Clenching his fist, Leon resolves that as her father, the best thing he can do is slowly prove his love through his actions. With a gentle smile, he pats Noah's head and reassures her that everything is fine. He suggests they go and have dinner together, reminding her that she needs to go to the academy tomorrow. Internally, he promises that he will always be there for her. Noah, without saying a word, simply looks at him. The next day, in the Queen's bedroom, Moon sits beside Rosweiss's bed, looking at her with concern. At that moment, Rosweiss's hand twitches, and she slowly opens her eyes, emerging from her coma. Moon, noticing that her mother is awake, moves closer to her with enthusiasm, calling out that Mommy is awake. With tears in her eyes, Moon says that her mother has been sleeping for so long, and she was so worried. Rosweiss, placing her hand gently on Moon's cheek, apologizes for making her worry. As Rosweiss gazes at her hand, she reflects internally that her body is still unable to exert any strength, and the magic power within her is unresponsive. Rosweiss, thinking to herself, reflects that with her body as the Dragon Queen, she should have been able to withstand the side effects of the Blood Curse's backlash. However, She wonders if the situation has become like this because she used that power to save Leon before. She also speculates that, based on his personality, the person would probably have run away by now. Ross Weiss then turns to Moon and asks how long she's been asleep. Moon replies that it's been 2 days. Ross Weiss, growing angry and silent for a moment, realizes that he couldn't have gotten far in just 2 days. She decides that there's still time to send someone to catch him. Just then, Leon enters the room, calling out to Moon in a sweet and cheerful voice, asking if she'd like fish for dinner. Leon, proudly displaying the large fish to Moon, tells her that he just caught it in the back hills. Moon, seeing the big fish, becomes excited at the sight of it. Leon, laughing with pride, asks her if she thinks he's awesome. Meanwhile, Ross Weiss remains silent, quietly observing the scene in front of her. Moon, still excited, exclaims that it's awesome. As the conversation between father and daughter continues, Leon, noticing Ross Weiss, turns his attention to her. With enthusiasm, Leon exclaims that she's awake. Ross Weiss, avoiding eye contact with him, turns to the other side of the bed and asks where he had been. Leon, with a playful wink, replies that he just went to the back hills to get some fresh air and caught a fish to nourish his dear wife's body. Hearing Leon's words, Ross Weiss blushes and responds with a flustered question, asking who is his dear. Moon, chiming in with a giggle, teases Leon and tells him not to be ashamed. Leon, holding up the fish, turns to Moon and says he has a glorious task for her, asking if she can take the fish to the kitchen. Moon, enthusiastic and full of energy, confidently accepts the task, telling him to leave it to her. Taking the fish, she heads off to the kitchen. As she leaves, Leon calls out loudly, letting her know that mommy and daddy have something to deal with, so she can start dinner without them. After Moon leaves, Ross Weiss calmly says that she thought he would abandon their daughter and run away while she was unconscious. Leon, looking at her seriously, replies that there are still many things between the two of them that haven't been settled, so why would he run away? Ross Weiss, narrowing her eyes, questions him back, asking what exactly is there between them. Leon leans in closer to Ross Weiss, his expression turning serious as he brings up a memory, asking if she remembers what she did to him when he had just woken up over a month ago. Ross Weiss, puzzled at first, questions what he's referring to. But as realization dawns on her, she becomes visibly taken aback, her expression shifting in surprise as she asks if he means that. Leon, now wearing a dark expression paired with a sinister smile, confirms her suspicion, telling her it's exactly what she's thinking. Ross Weiss, flustered, quickly pulls the blanket over herself and warns Leon not to take advantage of her just because she's currently weak, advising him not to try anything reckless. Hearing her words, Leon's expression darkens. With a mix of irritation and restrained anger, he questions her idea of weakness, reminding her that when he had just woken up, he hadn't even had a sip of water before she carved the dragon pattern onto him and pushed him down. He asks if she ever gave him a chance to say no. Ross Weiss, her expression turning serious, looks directly at Leon and warns him that he should consider the consequences for when she fully recovers, urging him not to do anything he'll regret. Leon, unfazed, suddenly leans in close to her face, catching her off guard with the abrupt closeness. With a low, confident tone, with a smirk, Leon questions what does she mean by regret? There's no such thing at all. Leon, then getting closer to Ross Weiss, softly calls her his dear wife. In one swift motion, he lifts Ross Weiss into his arms from the bed, holding her close. With a calm but resolute voice, he tells her that this is the best decision he has ever made in his life. Leon, gazing into Ross Weiss's eyes with a smirking smile, declares that this time, it's her turn to be the prisoner of war. Still holding her firmly in his arms, he begins carrying her toward the cherry blossom forest in the back hills. As he walks, Ross Weiss struggles and pushes against his head, demanding to be let go. In response to her resistance, Leon calmly warns her not to move, or she might fall. Ross Weiss, gritting her teeth in frustration, glares at him, thinking to herself that if she had already recovered her strength, she would have beaten him to the ground without hesitation. Eventually, Leon reaches the large tree nestled in the middle of the cherry blossom forest. With care, he gently places Ross Weiss down beneath its shade. Ross Weiss, looking at Leon with a serious expression, questions why he brought her to this place. Leon, standing proudly, replies that while she was unconscious, he carefully investigated the places she usually liked to visit, and this spot is her first stop for the night. Ross Weiss, gritting her teeth in frustration, glares at him and questions his words. What does he mean by first stop? She demands to know if he plans to take her somewhere else afterward. Leon, gesturing toward the silver dragon castle in the distance, says that from here, she can see it perfectly. He points out that this is her castle, and she can take in the entire view of it from where they stand. Rosweiss, recalling words she had once spoken, reflects on a time when she said she wanted him to understand what shame was, being so intimate in front of her hometown, so close to it. With a sharp look, she asks him if this is his way of avenging what happened in her hometown. Leon slowly unbuttons his shirt, revealing the dragon mark on his chest, its activation fueled by his longing for intimacy with her. He believes that treating others in their own way isn't something exclusive to dragons alone. As the mark glows to life, it resonates with Rosweiss, triggering the same response in her. Her chest begins to glow as the mark binds with her as well. Overwhelmed by the connection, Rosweiss loses her senses, overcome by the surge of intimacy. She drops to her knees, her breathing growing heavier with each passing second. Leon watches her intently, his expression steady. Though he is a human, he carries a powerful sense of revenge and ritual within him, just as dragons. Gently, he lifts her face by the chin, meeting her gaze. He tells her to look ahead. There lies her castle, the source of her pride and dignity. As his fingers trace the curves of her face, he whispers that from this moment on, she can only surrender to his control. Leon pushed Rosweiss to the ground, mocking her as he asked how it felt to be humiliated by a defeated dragon slayer. Rosweiss, clenching her fists, turned her head back to glare at him angrily. Taking control, Leon moved over her, kissing her slowly along her back. He reminded her that she had done all this to him before. As Leon continued, Rosweiss's breath grew heavier, and her body began to tremble beneath him. She lost her senses under his touch, thinking to herself that she wanted to resist, but her body couldn't help wanting more. In that moment, Rosweiss's mind worked through a thought. Summoning her dragon tail with whatever strength she had left, she wrapped it around Leon's arms, trying to resist his movements. Leon was taken aback in surprise, wondering how Rosweiss still had the strength to form her tail, especially with her weak body. As Rosweiss glanced back at him, she implied that while he still had control over the situation, he should try his best to make her feel ashamed and reluctant. Grinning through her teeth, she looked at him with anger, hinting that after this, she would exact even more brutal revenge on him. Leon, wearing an arrogant expression, remained confident, living solely in the present and dismissing any concerns about the future. Then, taking control of Rosweiss's body, their closeness intensified as he remarked that the night was still long and the carnival of revenge had only just begun. Her Majesty. The next morning, after a long night of intimacy, they returned to the Silver Dragon Queen's bedroom. Leon carefully placed Rosweiss on the bed, catches his breath as he was heavily exhausted from returning to the castle. He muttered to himself that he was finally back. Leon says that he was drained after tossing her around in different places all night. As Leon looked at Rosweiss's sleeping face, he thought that she seemed quite satisfied with the evening, as she slept so soundly. But then, Leon realized what he had just thought and wondered, what does he mean by she is satisfied? He had come for revenge, not for any satisfaction. Annoyed, he shook his head, convincing himself that she had just fully experienced the humiliation of being pinned down by the dragon slayer she despised the most. Leon looked at Rosweiss's sleeping face and thought to himself that, in any case, his revenge had been successful this time. Rising from the bed, he muttered that he should return to his own room before the maids woke up. After all, they weren't in a relationship where they could share a bed until morning. Just as he was about to leave, Rosweiss's hand reached out from behind and gently grabbed his shirt. Leon paused, glancing back at her sleeping face in confusion as she clung to him. In her sleep, Rosweiss murmured softly about the cold. Hearing this, Leon reflected silently that, when asleep, all living beings instinctively seek warmth and move closer to it. This is the instinct of all living things. Leon looked at Rosweiss with a distant, loner-like expression, reminding himself not to be fooled again. Yet, despite that thought lingering within him, he reached out and gently held Rosweiss's hand. Slowly, he slipped back under the bedsheet beside her. Lying close to Rosweiss, Leon gazed at her quietly, thinking that staying here beside her was far warmer than returning to his own room and lying alone on a cold bed. I'll upload the remaining chapters within 2 days. Enjoy watching, and don't forget to subscribe.